Hey, welcome everyone to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today, we have Valerie Alston. Valerie is an author, podcaster, former athlete. She's a coach. I think she trains coaches, trains athletes, helps the relationship between players and parents. Valerie, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so give us your story as an athlete.
Okay.
That led you to have the experiences that you had so that you have the street cred to coach.
Yeah. So grew up in Southern California. I was a softball player. Was my dominant sport. I played everything. I was a tomboy growing up. So anything I could play, I did until, I don't know, I fell in love with softball. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball pitcher initially. That was my initial drive, but that was not open to me. But I discovered softball, really played that primarily. How I ended up at Division I was always a very above average talent wise. I'm a good athlete, but I think what really helped me excel was the mental side. I studied the game. I really spent a lot of time. My dad was my primary coach for a lot of those years. And in Southern California, the travel ball scene at the time was primarily in Orange County. And so I had to commute. And so we had often 45 minutes to an hour's worth of car ride in one direction to really just be together and talk sport, or sometimes we didn't talk sport at all, but just life. And this was obviously the even cell phone days. So we had to spend time in those car rides and really just communicate and talk and spend time together. So I think for me, that becoming a student of the game with my dad is what set me apart. And I fell in love with softball early enough that I decided I wanted to play that and play in college. That was my dream. It was to earn a scholarship to play in college. And so once I got into the high school age and was moving towards the recruiting side of things, again, I knew that as a Southern California kid, I was never like the top 10%. So I wasn't going to be going to any of the Pac-10 at that time. That was not an option for me. But I knew I was a very good player. I'd always been on national level teams, won national tournaments at the time with different teams, knew I was a very solid, good player. And so I started looking around, made sure I knew I was going to be going out of state, and had the opportunity. I got recruited by Minnesota and a couple other places too, but fell in love with it. It was apparently the Midwest people are my people. I felt so at home when I visited. But the journey there, because I was not always the most talented athlete, I really had to maximize the mental game. And I had a particular incident my junior year, of kind of the end of my junior year leading into my senior year, where I took a lot of pressure on. I went to a small high school, and I took a lot of pressure on feeling like I had to be the one that carried the team because I was a travel ball kid where some of the others weren't. And I started getting in my head, and my dad noticed. He's like, you're playing very hesitant. That's not you. And especially the high school level that I played at was much lower than my travel ball pedigree. So it just was really weird. He saw me really hesitant, and it just seemed off. And essentially what happened is I had taken an experience in my sophomore year. We lost the state tournament, and one of the defining moments of that loss was in the first inning. I was a number 4 batter. We had bases loaded, no outs, and I struck out looking. And while I was not the only reason why we didn't win that game, I think I internalized that so that when we got into the next high school season in my junior year, I was taking on so much. Like it was my fault that we lost that game, even though I know intellectually it wasn't. I think my little high school brain decided that was true. And I started pressing and just trying to be the type of player, trying to be too much instead of just see ball, hit ball, lean into it. So my dad introduced me to a sports psychology professional, and I started working with them to help overcome some of that. Did a lot of deep breathing, did a lot of just analyzing where that hesitation was coming from, getting back to who I was as a player. And it really helped me. So by the time I got to college, thankfully I had because of that experience, I had some good skills to help me handle the pressure of being at that college level. And I found that did set me apart from some of my teammates who maybe were more physically talented than me, but I was able to just lock in better, be more confident in my skill set because I had that sports psychology understanding of what it actually took to compete at a high level and to be confident despite whatever's going on. And so I fell in love with that side of the sport and ended up studying it. And now that's my profession. So I think that very long-winded.
No, let me go back to something, Valerie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to write your story about what happened when you were a junior in high school, when you were in the state tournament and you were the cleanup batter and you struck out in the biggest moment that could have made a difference in the game. Because even if you had a blooper, you probably would have gotten 2 runs. I don't know what the outcome. I know the outcome was you lost, but I don't know how close the game was. But when those things happen, doesn't matter what people think. It's what you think they think. And as a teenager, you think the worst. And so you're thinking you were the GOAT, not the good GOAT, the bad GOAT. And that becomes your identity. And when that becomes your identity, it almost like it paralyzes you. So that's why you were hesitating. And so, one of the things that's really critical for athletes to do is to remember that they aren't what they do. They're human beings, not human doers or human performers. And just, Tom Brady's thrown more incompletions than anybody in the history of the game. Babe Ruth struck out so many times. You look at the best players in Major League Baseball, they all fail a lot. The guy that's going to win the MVP is going to strike out, or not strike out. He's going to get out 67% of the time or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but yeah, let's not look at the sports psychology. Let's look at your dad. What's your father's first name?
Greg.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was one fundamental principle that your father taught you when you were a teenager that you pass on today as a mental coach, that you can attribute it to, this school, this expert, this book, but it really came from dad?
That's so unfair. There's so many life lessons that were instilled. Let's see, which one do I want to go with? I think for me, it's actually become a bit of a joke in our relationship, but it's founded in a lot of, it's play hard, have fun, no mercy. And that was a bit of our mantra. He taught me that if you're going to do something, do it right. Play hard. That no matter the circumstances, if you're up 10 runs, if you're down 10 runs, play hard, because the only thing you can control is your effort. You can't, you can crush a ball and it'll go right at somebody. So I think instilling that competitiveness, that whatever you're doing, do it hard, do it to the full extent of your capabilities. And then the have fun part is enjoy it, right? There's no reason to be miserable doing the things that you do. And so making sure that you really take the time to enjoy that journey as much as you can, which doesn't mean that every moment of that journey is going to be pleasant. Again, I struck out with bases loaded in the first inning of a state title game. That wasn't fun, but I think having the overall mantra of play hard, have fun it helped remind me that be there with my teammates, have a good time, celebrate the successes, do the silly shenanigans and the car rides and the bus rides, like enjoy being there. And the no mercy part was a couple things there is, in the competitive spirit, is you don't let off the gas. You go hard, you play at your absolute best. Because especially as a young athlete, there's that tendency to change your level of play based on the competition. Some people will be like, oh, well, this is that easy team, so we'll just let up. And what happens is you end up, often those games go poorly because you're not sticking to your processes. You're not playing at your level. You're kind of playing down to the competition. And that's not a way to be successful, right? You want to make sure that you play always at your best. And if you run rule somebody, you run rule them, right? It doesn't mean you have to be mean on the field. You still treat everybody with dignity and respect. You treat them, you respect the competitor that you're in front of. You're not going to maybe take extra bases, but you play as if they are the best team ever that you've ever faced. And then, so that idea of no mercy was really important in that to really get that competitive drive to keep me locked in no matter who we were playing against. So I think that's how it played out for me in sport, what that came to mean for us and our relationship. Shoot, we even still say it all the time. My dad's huge into pickleball now. And so every time we get off the phone, I was like, hey, play hard, have fun, no mercy. It's just it's our mantra now. But I think I've taken it out of sport too. And it's now just a life mantra for us that's how we approach, he's taught me to approach life in general.
Okay, now 2026, X years later, those three things are very valuable. What would be number 4 that you would add?
From a life, or like things I've learned now that I would add to that.
You've learned now, things you've learned since, because I'm looking at play hard, that's all you can expect. That's all you can do. Give it everything you got. You can't give any more than you got. And it's not about winning. It's about your output more than the outcome. And then have fun golly, if you're not having fun, what are we doing this for? And then, have no mercy is to me a little bit like number 1, but the way you described it, it's more an inside game rather than an outside game. It's not paying attention to your circumstances, your opponent, the competition, all those things. And it allows you to have the freedom to give it everything you've got, which is the first one, because you're not letting the circumstances control you.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a 4 and a 5, or at least a 4 that you since then that, if you were making, you're passing it down to one of your kids or nieces or nephews or whatever, what is that going to be?
I think what I would add in my professional life, I've spent the last 18 years working with and for the military, teaching mental toughness, resilience, those type of things. I think what I would add is let it go. Play hard, have fun, no mercy, let it go. That regardless of the outcome, regardless of what happened, this idea that learn from it, mine it, whatever happened, positive or negative. If you don't have a healthy mechanism to just let it go and move on to whatever's next, often you can dwell and it can cause some problems. So this idea of once you've had the experience, you've learned from it, you've grown from it. Okay, it's done. Let's not stay in it. Moving forward is important. And I think the other piece I would maybe add is you're not alone, is that life is not a solo sport. It's a team sport. That if we're looking at somebody's individual capacity to be resilient and mentally tough, it requires a team. And however you define that team, whether, as a young athlete, that's your support network of your coaches, your parents, your siblings, your friends, your teachers that are there to support you and help you, recognizing that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to figure it out right away. In fact, there are times where you're currently where you're at in your life isn't enough to handle the situation. You do need external support or somebody to help you out to get you over that hump. So I think that's what I would add is that it's even if you are a solo performer, you still have a team of people help and support you. And I think it's so important, not just for your ability to be a good athlete, but just to be an effective human. Life is not a solo sport. It's a team sport. So you're not alone. Who are your people? Who do you have in your corner? Who are those relationships that you can lean on when times are tough, that you can get joy from and fun and community, it's a basic psychological need that we have as humans is to connect, to be related to other people. And without that connection, without that relation, life is a lot harder. And so I think in today's environment with all the social media and all that, it's like a blessing and a curse. You can kind of have access to more people, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're connected one-to-one with people in a productive way. And so I think a lot of people feel isolated or alone. So I'd like people to know that you need other people. You're not alone.
I'm going to add 2. You added 2, so I'm going to add 2.
Yeah, great. Let's hear it.
So let it go allows you to not time travel to the past, but you can time travel to the future and think about what could be and what could happen and what kind of recognition you're going to get or what kind of blame you're going to get based upon a future event in the game or the competition. So number 6 would be fully present, be totally in the moment. Okay. And then the last one is, I think, maybe the most important one, which is you are not defined by what you do. You're defined by who you are. Because I think, like for you, that 16-year-old girl or 17, whatever age you were at the time, you started to think that what you did is who you are. and it limits you. And so from an identity standpoint, working with professional athletes and college athletes, myself, they've got to believe that their parents love them regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they love themselves regardless. Pressure looks a lot different, tastes a lot different, smells a lot different when your connection to people and approval from people is not tied to your performance. Right?
Yeah. And I try to teach that as well. I mean, I think that's so important that you're not to what you said earlier, you're not what you do, and helping young people create an identity that is well-rounded, that it's not driven. Yeah, it's okay if part of your identity is wrapped up in your sport. But if that's all you know, if that's all you have, that's probably going to get you in trouble at some point. Because at some point you will have to give up your sport, whether via injury or just you're not good enough to keep going to the next level, or at some point you're too old to keep playing it.
Age or eligibility.
Yeah, you're going to age out or injury out, or so. Yeah, teaching people to have a more well-rounded approach to their identity.
When is that aha moment for most people when they realize the mental game is as important as the physical game? Because I got to believe that for most youth that play on travel teams, club teams, the more they practice, the more time they commit to the sport, the better they keep getting. And they don't have time for the mental game because the physical game is showing progress, shows up on the court, the field, the diamond, you pick the place. But at some point in time, I don't care who you are, it's going to get you. And your mindset, your mental game is not going to be on par. How does that show up for most athletes?
Usually they come to me when they're in crisis. And I don't mean like literal crisis, like mental health crisis, but just things have gotten to a point where whatever they have been trying and have done up until this point is no longer working. Typically, it's a confidence issue. Something has happened and they just can't get back to that trust in themselves to be successful. Or they've had, I'm working with a recent athlete who's coming back from injury and trying to get that injury it wasn't a traumatic injury or anything. It wasn't like but just, an overuse injury that they're rehabbing and getting back to. And that ability to trust the process and come back to try to get back to functioning what their quote unquote normal was can be really hard. So often when they're coming to me, it's because something's going wrong and they can't figure out why, or they know it's mental or emotional. They just don't know how to fix it. I wish that more people would proactively do mental skills training and not wait until something has gone wrong, that they would work on it would just be part of how they train, just like you have a hitting coach or a strength and conditioning coach or as a basketball, shooting coach, whatever, right? I wish people would be more proactive and train those skills before they need them. Kind of, I think it's, what is a John F. Kennedy analogy? It's the time to repair the roof is not when it's raining. Analogy is, sure, we're going to help, and I'm going to help you when you're in crisis, and we're going to work through it. But more people should start training. I mean, shoot, even at 10, 9, 10, 11, like there's still valuable tools, training your mindset, training your confidence, training your focus, training your ability to regulate your body and what's going on so that you can set conditions to be able to perform at a high level when you need to. Like, you don't have to wait till it goes wrong. Like, let's proactively work on it so you feel like you have the tools that you need eventually when it starts raining.
Very few people, I mean, some do. Most people don't go to the doctor until they have a problem.
Correct.
Right? And so you're really the doctor of mental sport, and people don't want to use you. They don't believe it's important until it is. I think another time that besides just losing confidence or injury is when they know they can do it, but for whatever reason, they're not doing it. And it's like, what the heck? They can't figure it out. So they work a little bit harder, maybe get a little bit more sleep. Maybe they do something, mix it up, and they cannot perform at the level they know they're capable of performing. And it blows their mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I see that. I hear that a lot from parents too. Oh, they're great at practice. They're great at but as soon as there's pressure, they're in a game situation, they fall apart. Like that's a pretty normal thing I hear of why they end up showing up as well.
Let's just take that one. I have a son or a daughter, and he or she is doing wonderful in practice, gets opportunities to start in their sport, whatever that may be, but they choke in the games. What are some of the reasons for that?
There's usually a couple avenues for what's going on there. One, they haven't trained pressure moments in practice. I think what a lot of, especially inexperienced youth coaches, folks that aren't trained, and let's be honest, most youth coaches are volunteers. They don't necessarily have a lot of training. They don't understand how to create pressure in practice that's as realistic as possible as a game setting. And so that dealing with pressure is a muscle like anything else. If you've never done it before, of course, it's going to be difficult to do the first time or in a game situation. So creating opportunities to practice that pressure through games and competition and scrimmages and different types of things that you can do in practice so that your athletes actually learn what it feels like, how it changes their internal experience, how their heart rate gets up and how they get a little chaotic. And once they've experienced it in practice and they know what works and what doesn't, with instruction and some guidance helping from coaches is helping them say, okay, this just happened. You got overwhelmed. You fell apart. What happened? Okay, let's talk through that. Like, okay, so what could you do differently next time? Well, I could take a breath here or I could slow things down. They're like, great. Okay, let's do it again. Rerun the drill. So I think a big part of that is not enough coaches train dealing with pressure in practice. But then the other part of that is you got to have a tool set. You got to have a skill set to manage it. And typically what I see most frequently is what you mentioned. People are future focused. Well, what if this and what if that? I might let my team down. This could go wrong. And that's okay in the pregame, thinking about what could go wrong. How might I address it? But in the moment of performing, if I'm trying to hit with bases loaded, thinking about, well, what if I strike out is not helpful because you're focused on the wrong thing. In that moment, you should just be focused on what do I need to do to be successful, right? Swing at good pitches, read the pitch, something along those lines, right? So I think generally, these are gross generalizations, that the main issues I see is kids aren't able to trust their skill set, like to trust their preparation and their training. And so that diminishes the confidence, which makes them more anxious, which makes them more likely to fold under pressure. They don't have a tool to regulate what's happening in their body physiologically, right? Once that fight or flight kicks on, that they're not quite sure how to calm it back down. So the ability to take some breaths, regain that composure to get their body back under their control. And then typically the thinking skills that help them focus on the right thing at the right time. That if you don't have the way to redirect your energy to recognize that, no, you're never going to be perfect as you try to play your sport. There's too many variables, too many things. It's not possible. That if you don't have a tool for bouncing back after minor failures, big failures, for me as that junior and high, that sophomore year at bat with bases loaded in the first inning, right, I didn't have a way. I know looking back, my body was so out of whack during that. And at that time, I didn't have the tools to regulate that. Like I could still remember thinking back on it, how hard my heart was pumping and I was breathing. I was trying to take breaths and I couldn't get my body to simmer down. And I remember being jittery. So had I had the tools at that time to manage that would have helped me. And also I thought I had to be the person. I had to be the one in that moment. If it's not me, nothing else is going to happen. And so I believed in that moment that it was my game to win or lose in the first inning, first at bat of the game. And so I put in my thinking, I was focused on the wrong things, which caused even more pressure. And I folded miserably. So
one thing that I wasn't in your body. This was 22 years ago or whatever it was. 20 years ago. Fear of failure is the reason why people leave the bat on their shoulder. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's on the outside corner, maybe you strategically thought it was a ball, but most of the time it's right down the middle and you just can't move the bat. and it's fear of failure. A couple things I'd like to embellish, and then I want to ask you a question about confidence here. Self-regulation in a game, to me, is paramount for an athlete to adjust to the circumstances. And most of them can't. It's like things are going good until they're going good. And then when they go bad, it's like they go off the rails.
Yeah.
A soccer player gets a yellow card. A basketball player gets a technical. They lose their cool. Okay. They just can't handle being unregulated, because when you go into the game, you prepare yourself to be regulated. Then you train, you warm up, and you're regulated. Everything's status quo. And you get in the game and it's going your way. Wonderful. And then the proverbial whatever hits the fan and you're like, don't know how to respond. But I want to shift to confidence, because I think it's so, so important. What I've seen working with athletes is there's a handful of confidence busters, but the three primary ones are comparison, perfection, and scoreboard watching. And scoreboard watching is being attached to the outcome, and perfection is exactly what it is. You're trying to be perfect. Nobody is, nobody ever has been, and nobody ever will. But for some crazy reason, you think you're going to be. Okay. And then comparison is, I don't think I've ever compared myself to an athlete ever and not found something they could do better than me. But when you start comparing, it becomes dominant. Like there's a lot of things that person can do better than me. And now you can't even think you can do anything better than that person. And the reality of it is, if you and I went and played a sport, I'm older than you and, didn't play softball and all that stuff, but there's probably something I'm better than you.
I would imagine. Yeah.
No, something. I don't know what it would, something. And so, but you, obviously that's your sport, so you probably would dominate me. But I can't be my best when I'm comparing myself to you. I mean, you're a Division I athlete. So how do you train? How do you build an athlete's confidence? What are some of the steps? What are some of the tools? What's the process for building? Because everybody listening, I don't care who you are, you've had days where your confidence takes a dip.
Yeah. I subscribe to the it's actually a self-efficacy model, but the idea that there are sources of confidence, that there's places you can pull from to enable your trust in yourself, your belief in your ability to be successful in any given moment. And so one of the first primary sources is your prior experience and feeling like you have the capacity to do the thing. And so for coaches, for parents, for kids listening, the dominant source of confidence is having done the thing. And whether you were successful or not, putting yourself in a place to practice that skill set, that whatever it is, whatever sport you play. Now, when you're younger, that's going to start with the basics, right? I have to have trust in my ability to throw it to first. Well, have I ever got an opportunity to throw it to first from whatever sport on the field I am? So getting prior experience is valuable. And that's why it's so important to spend time training. I know I see that as kind of a curse this day and age with everybody converting to more travel sports and people coming from all over. They don't train anymore. They don't practice together as teams anymore. Everybody just shows up for game day. It's like, where's the development? Where's the ability to put people work on things, to do drills, to do game-like scenarios, right? So training is a huge part of having confidence, is that you have to believe you have that ability. And if you've never had the opportunity to demonstrate that ability, it makes sense that you would not have trust in a game situation to be able to execute it. Now, you can't always rely on that, because as always, we can't predict every moment that's going to happen in a game. You can't predict every type of scenario that could play out, but you can prepare for a lot of it. And so the more you train and develop that's a lot of where your confidence comes from, is putting in the work. I would say the next level is the way you think about those experiences. I mean, we can use vicarious experience too. We can watch other people and say, okay, Susie's over there doing that thing. She started that drill. I wasn't quite sure if I could do that drill, but I'm watching her do it. And it's like, oh, okay. I might be able to do that. So you can learn from other people's experience too. It doesn't have to just be your own personal experience. But the next level there is just, how are you thinking about any of that stuff? Whether your experience was success or a quote unquote failure moment, how am I interpreting it? When I had a failure moment, what am I ascribing that failure to? Was it something I had control over? Was it something, within, was it internal? Was it external? Was it in my control, out of my control? Is this a stable quality, something that's going to be there for a long time? Or is this unstable, just a fluke of the moment situation? And the way you explain your successes and your failures, you need to explain them in ways that enable future success and prevent you from making that same failure again. So typically it's taking accountability. Typically it's figuring out what you had control over and what you didn't, and leaning your effort and your energy towards the controllable factors. Being honest, whether this was a stable or unstable factor. And so what I mean by that is, we'll use a simple thing of you woke up, it's game day and you're sick, right? You're not feeling your best. And maybe that day you're just kind of at 70%. And so you don't have your best energy. You end up getting thrown out at second because you're a little bit slower than you normally are because of you're just run down and tired. Like, okay, all right, today I got thrown out because I'm just not full speed today. I'm a little sick. Like, that's an unstable factor. That's not something that's going to be around every time you play the game. So those are sometimes context dependent, but how do you explain the successes and failures that you're having, and making sure that you're explaining them in ways that will enable, again, future success. So if I had a success, I want to explain it in a way that I can repeat it. If I had a failure moment, I want to explain it in a way that enables my ownership and gives me a pathway forward to fix or correct that mistake so that I feel confident in that the next opportunity, I won't make that same mistake. And then the last thing is really just that internal self-talk, right? How do you talk to yourself? Are you saying I can or I can't? At the very basic level, your inner dialogue becomes your behavior. And so making sure that that inner dialogue is working for you is leading to trust, sense of certainty in your abilities, not diminishing it.
Okay. Give you 30 seconds. I want you to summarize that for me real quick.
You got to train. You got to put in the work so that you've got something to hang your confidence on. And you got to think in effective ways. Make sure that the internal dialogue you have is working for you. It's fueling your confidence, not detracting from it.
You have to be honest and you have to have positive self-talk.
Yeah. I would even change it to productive, because positive, sometimes people see that as like, oh, it's all good. I just have to be happy in my thoughts. Like, now, productive, you can be honest. That sucked. I was trash today. That was absolute garbage. And I recognize that now. Here's what I'll do differently. Let's move forward. So I lean towards productive versus positive, but the effect is the same.
I didn't do this when I competed. And I didn't do this when I coached teams. But I've learned this in the last 5 or 6 years, that confidence is so different than belief, in the sense of, like you, Valerie, you have to buy stock in you every single day when you wake up, and you got to be 100%er. You can't be a 99.9er in believing in who you are. And then confidence is about the things that you do as a coach, as a mom, whatever things you've got going on. As an athlete, your skills. But let's just take softball. You could be one of those people that have a lot of confidence in your base run, but you don't have confidence in hitting the outside pitch. And you got a lot of confidence in your ability to throw accurately if you're in the outfield when you're playing defense. Let's just take like 10 things. Maybe you're confident in 8 of them and you're not confident in 2. Let's not just say you're not confident. Girl, you got a lot going on. You got 80% of these things. You're killing it. It's helping the athlete realize that, hey, you're a little down. You're not really feeling it. Well, let's talk about all the things that show up in a game. Are you confident in that one? Oh yeah, I'm good there. Then let's not let the 2 things poison the rest.
Yeah.
Let's focus on your program of how you train that, how you think it. Are you honest about it? And are you productively talking to yourself? And that helps them like just narrow it down instead of doing brain surgery and taking the whole thing. Let's just take the part that's not working.
Yeah.
Let's take the tumor out.
Yeah. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing with confidence is there's a worthiness that comes in on confidence. If somebody, let's say, for example, you and I are teammates, play the same position, we're the same gender, same sport, all that stuff. And you putting in the work and I'm skating and I'm kind of like cutting corners. When I get up to, let's say we're playing softball, when I get up to the plate, I don't feel worthy to be successful because I know what my teammate's doing and I'm not doing what you're doing. So I think there's an unworthiness that's a source of lack of confidence because you didn't train,
I do think too that there are people out there who have delusions of grandeur. Right? They just believe that they are quite good at something, even if they're not. So that there are people like that too that have zero talent, but believe I'm better than everybody. But that's going to quickly, once the competition catches up, those folks are not going to last much longer in elite sport. They don't last super long, but yeah, there are people who are completely confident even though they have zero competence.
Oh, I know. You don't want too many of those people on your team.
Yeah, not so
if
much.
You're the coach. Those are not ideal athletes. Okay. So my brain keeps going back to training, pressure, and practice. I think that if every coach took that to heart and really, created creative periods in practice where that was prevalent, then when they get in the games, regardless of how they do in practice, they're comfortable with that discomfort.
Yeah.
So like in softball, I guarantee I know how it works. Okay. I don't know. I'm
surmising.
Yeah, we put a defense out, and then we're gonna run through the ladies that are in the dugout, and eventually we might end up with bases loaded situation, and the girl that's at the plate at that point in time actually feels some pressure. No, every time every batter's got the bases loaded, and if that person hits a grand slam, we get 3 people on base.
Yep,
constantly pounding that pressure, and maybe even starting with an 0-2 count. Things like that just, like ramp it up. As soon as they get comfortable with the bases loaded, now hey, now you're a pinch hitter because the girl got, something happened and she has to step out of the game and we got to put somebody in and so on too. Can you handle it? Usually when it's an even count and there hasn't been a pitch yet, everybody feels comfortable. And then, it was a little bit, didn't swing and it's 0-1. Now you feel a little bit different. And then it's a bad pitch and the ump calls it a strike. And then it even feels worse. Can you perform? Can you still swing the bat loosely and confidently? Or is that when you get tight and you can't hit the ball? What are just tackle the sport of softball? And, probably not a softball coach listening, but just in case there are.
Yeah.
And people are so smart, they can take this information you're going to share and transfer it to their sport. What other ways can you simulate pressure?
Yeah, there's several approaches. One, realistic game pressure. So, again, softball, you put a defense out there, you put runners on, you say, all right, 2-2 count, 2 outs, bottom of the 7th, you're down by a run, good, do or die, go. Because then the defense is working the pressure because it's not a safe. They have to protect the lead, right? And then the offense is also, they're trying to get that lead back, and there's enough runners on that it's doable in that moment. One swing of the bat could change the whole game. So realistic game pressures that they're likely to face. So recreating those as best you can and making sure that they're intentional. So like you said, is resetting. So don't do a full scrimmage where you wait for that situation to occur, is make it happen, right? For football, that might be, we're practicing 4th and inches for the next 10 minutes, but then also adding what I find helpful is some level of consequence at the end of that. Because if it's just practice, sometimes there's not a consequence that when they know it's not real, that there's not a consequence of actual winning or losing. Sometimes it doesn't feel as real as a true game. So adding some level of consequence, and it could be arbitrary, like, all right, you got to do a lap. So if you don't win this half inning that we're playing right now, if offense wins, defense got to take a lap. If defense wins, offense has got to take a lap or whatever. It shouldn't be exorbitant, but just something that is a natural consequence that would okay. So adding some level of consequence can actually ramp up that pressure and make it feel a little more game-like. So practicing the game pressures, the realistic game pressures is one way. Another way is any other type of competitive thing that you can instill in practice that maybe isn't a game situation, but is some sort of stakes on the line. So we did simple things in softball where coach would set up, a bucket on a chair, and we'd have like 3 outfielders. You each get 1 throw from center field, and if between the 3 of you can't knock the bucket over, the whole team does some sort of punishment. Like you got to do burpees, or you got to do, take a lap or do something. So while it's not technically a game scenario, it is a relevant skill, being able to hit, throw an accurate throw under pressure. And so games like that can be really powerful, or like mini competitions. This team, all right, you get 5 pitches, and no matter where the pitch is, you got to get the bunt down. So whichever team gets the most bunts in play, wins, something like that. So even if it's not a game-like situation, you're still using your sports skills. You're still making them execute sports relevant skills, but you're gamifying it in a way that creates some external pressure and some fun. I think a lot of, it's a gross generalization, but a lot of kids today don't know how to compete, right? They don't know how to dig in, I'm coming at you, like that killer instinct, if you will, of you don't always see that. And I don't know where that went. I have opinions and I have ideas, but I hear that from a lot of college coaches these days, that competitive edge, that willingness to dig in and be the person with the game on the line seems to be less in today's generation. So
I agree. Hang on a second. I just called you up and I say, I'm a college coach and I've got an athlete missing the killer instinct. How do you train that? Because I think a lot of coaches, since it's innate, it's natural, but I need this player to have it. It's the difference between this player being pretty good to being great. And I'm trying to find the switch. They talk about turn on the switch, all these things that all represent they're not in the headspace they need to be in. How do you shift their mindset a little bit so that they can acquire that killer instinct?
In my opinion, unfortunately, it's not a simple answer because some of it depends on where it's coming from. I know often for teen girls, for instance, they're so driven by social relationships, and that sometimes it comes from the worry of, if I do compete at that level, if I do take that hard-nosed, competitive edge, I might damage a relationship. And so it's the fear of I'd rather not rock the boat and cause contention. And so trying as a coach, that's just one reason. That's not the only reason why people aren't competitive, but trying to really dig a little bit of where that might be coming from, because there's many things that could cause it. So trying to figure that out first as best you can, and then you coach to whatever that gap is. So for the young team example, young women not wanting to harm relationships, is teaching them, creating as a coach a safe space of teaching them what it means to be competitive, that in this environment on the field, going hard, play hard, have fun, no mercy. That was my version of it. You compete hard, you push hard, and we all are doing that, creating that culture that by doing that, you're helping your teammate get better. You're helping push them. You're helping challenge them. They're helping challenge you. And together, because we're competing hard like that, because you're going hard, as a team, we're going to grow together and be even better. And so trying to shift it from I'm somehow and that it's not a competing against, it's competing with. especially inside your team, is that I'm not actually, me competing hard in this moment is helping both of us grow and develop. I think about one of my best friends in college. We're roommates and very, very close friends. She was a pitcher. I was originally a catcher, ended up playing second base, but we were very close from all the bullpen sessions and things like that. And inevitably, playing softball, you scrimmage against each other at some point. You're playing against your own teammates. And so I'd face my friend fairly often against her. And we would definitely crap talk each other. Like, oh yeah, you got nothing. I got you to but we compete hard. And I think she threw hardest against me and I was most locked in against her. But as soon as that interaction was over, I could remember, she beamed me one time and she's like, gosh, dang it. Like, what? I thought you were going to, but because we had that trust and that love for each other, we knew that whatever was happening on the field was there to push each other. And that as soon as we took that uniform off, there was that love and that respect, that there was the mutual understanding we're competing with each other, not against that. So I think that's an important piece, is as a coach, trying to figure out where's that underlying lack of competition coming from. What you said earlier, a lot of it comes from fear of failure. That can be a reason. If they're terrified to fail, they'd rather it's almost self-protective. If they can give themselves an excuse, well, if there's an excuse, well, I failed because I didn't try that hard, or, it's almost self-protective. I'm trying to think
those are very good ideas.
Yeah.
What I heard you say, which I've never thought of this before, is it's more on the coach than the player. And so if you think about, let's say, for example, you have, 15 girls playing softball. 10 of them got the killer instinct, 5 of them don't. And the coach is trying to fix them. If the coach would take a step back and create a safe environment with expectations, boundaries, hey, this is how we do it. This is how people are going to respond. And when we get out of practice, we're all going to be homegirls again. And you guys can all, be in your cliques or whatever you got going on. But when you come to practice, you put on the uniform, you step on the field, this is how we're going to play. And it's acceptable for everybody. Which, for some of these girls, I may think it's like, hey, you're being a jerk. You're being overly aggressive. You're being mean. No, this is how we define competitiveness. And that's the standard the coach has to communicate clearly and effectively and consistently to his or her team, that this is competitiveness. And I think I've never thought of that before, because I've always wondered how to turn the light on myself for some guys.
Yeah.
It's like, it really is the coach, because some athletes don't pay attention to the impact of their actions on their teammates. Some care deeply. And for those that care deeply, you have to help them understand they don't need to care, because you're going to still love each other after practice is over, right?
Yeah. That's what I've found, is that setting conditions and helping a coach. I think like John Wooden was a master. I mean, he had so many wonderful qualities in how he coached, but he recruited the best talent. Obviously, he had amazing players that played for him, but the way he set his practices up is he would recruit a guy. I apologize, don't remember the dude's name, but specifically recruited him because he would be Bill Walton's nemesis. And I needed that kid to play against Bill Walton every day in practice and just get on him and make him a better player, so that when we were playing the true opponents, he was ready. He knew what it took to overcome that type of player, right? Because that's how the other teams are going to try to.
I think it was Kiki Vanderway or somebody like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but I think it was somebody like that.
Yeah. And so even, just thinking about that as a coach and I was obviously never on any of these teams, but you hear any of John Wooden's players talk about him, they loved each other. They loved him. They loved, that environment was created so mindfully by him that, the probably the hardest games they ever played at UCLA were against each other in practice, not against other teams. So just thinking about that is that a lot of it does have to do with the environment that they feel safe to compete at that level, but also sometimes they just don't know what it means to compete hard. So sometimes it is a certain level of education that just needs to, let's get on the same page of what this means in the context of sport. I think that's for me where my play hard, have fun, no mercy came from, is that the no mercy piece was that competitive edge. But my dad always tempered that with no mercy does not mean disrespectful. It does not mean diminishing or demeaning the people you're playing against. It meant giving your very best, no matter who shows up, because that's you're challenging them, but you're still, sportsmanship and all that. Like it was couched together in that. So I think, again, as coaches, thinking about where are you setting boundaries for that that are reflected in effective sportsmanship and good character and that type of thing. And do you correct it if they go a little off the rails and it does get some contentious? Are you the one that's like, all right, take a breath, let's break in? Making sure that if it does get heated, that you're protecting that space and making sure that you're able to cool things down and let it process it so that they can come back to, again, you are teammates. You will respect each other. You don't always have to like each other, but you will respect each other.
Compete as hard as you can with respect. I had the fortunate occasion to hang out with Coach Wooden.
Wow.
Yeah. I was his escort, picked him up at the airport. I was like his Uber driver for like 5 days. It was super
How cool
dope.
is that?
Yeah.
Were you just picking his brain the whole time?
You know what? He was so humble that everything he said was like, it was almost like profound, but he didn't say a lot. I think all of us like to, we just want to say all these words. He would just say few words. He was very simple. One of the things he was about with this pyramid of success was he had very high standards for his athletes, and he cared about the whole person. And I think when we coach sports, a lot of coaches forget, this is a young man, young girl. This is a college kid that's struggling or trying to adjust to college life, or just got dumped by their boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, and parent issues or whatever it might be. It's remembering the total person, not just the athlete part. And when you can connect with the total person, you're going to make a bigger impact on the athlete part.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always subscribed to that. They don't care what you know until they know that you care model of coaching, that at least in my field in sports psychology, any psychological domain, like I think most research says something about 75 to 80% of the value of a counseling or coaching relationship is the rapport. The relationship part is what drives the effectiveness of any interaction. And so, especially, I think a player can always respect a coach if they understand you care about me, you have my best intentions. Like you genuinely are trying to do your best to help me be the best athlete I can be. At least I always knew when I had that understanding of my coaches, you could forgive them when they have bad moments or when they chew you out or when they maybe weren't at their best either as humans. But it's like, okay, on the whole, I know coach cares about me. I know they're trying. Like that, it goes a big way. And I've also had coaches who were absolute. I knew they didn't care about me. I was a cog in a wheel, and you bet your booty that experience was very different. They did not get the loyalty, and they did not have an inspired team. So
I would say every athlete filters the coaching that they receive from their coaches based on whether or not they have a relationship or not. And if they don't feel like they're connected to their coach doesn't believe in them, doesn't trust them, all those type of things, it has a negative interpretation by the athlete. Like, oh, coach punished me. He or she doesn't like me, all those kind of things. And when you feel like you have a relationship, the obvious other side happens. You look, God, this coach really wants me to work hard, really wants me to get better, really is pushing me. And so even think about this. A coach speaks to his or her whole team, and none of them receive it identically the same. And some of them are on polar opposites, positive for me, negative, not for me. So, okay, young lady, I think we could have did like 4 podcasts because we're already past an hour, and We really never even got started. We just kind of were rocking and rolling. I want to so much for being on Pro Mindset today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to come back.
We may have to do it again.
All right.
Thank you very much, Valerie.
Yeah.
Oh, where can people find you?
Yes. The best place is www.confidentcalmclutch.com/quicklinks. It's kind of my link in bio page that you can see my podcasts there. I've got a podcast for parents and players together to listen to, car ride conversations to help facilitate mental toughness and relationships and good dialogue there. And then I've got the Clutch Academy for sports coaches, which is focused on interviews with fellow youth sport coaches and talking about how they embed mental toughness, mental skills into their process as coaches. So those are probably two big opportunities, but you can find all that at the confidentcalmclutch/quicklinks. So.
And check out the show notes.
Yes, that too.
Thank you very much. It's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a Pro Mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.